Hey, what is going on, crowdfunding fans? It's the brain of the mainframe, Nile Scala here with Crowdfunding Comics with my pal, my friend, my co-host, my best chum, Mr. Billy Tucci. How are we doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing pretty terrific as usual. I got a haircut today. What do you think?
Yeah, looking good. Looking good. You could have took a little more off the other side, but I think it's all right.
I took more on one side than the other.
Yeah,
Great.
I think you should have did the whole paratrooper mohawk.
I thought about it. I really did. There was a reenactment, but I don't. It was last weekend when I was away, and had I done it, I would have got the mohawk, which I've done. But anyway, enough about that. We are now at our 22nd episode with our 22nd guest. Right? It's really technically our 24th show, but our 22nd guest, and one of the shows I'm incredibly excited about because I have his book here, and he's a phenomenal, incredibly interesting young man. So what I would say, without further ado, can we please welcome Crusaders and Centurions to our my new friend, Preston Poulter. Hello, Preston. How are you, my friend?
How we doing, Preston?
Billy. Thank you for all those kind words. I appreciate it.
Oh, no. When you contacted us, I think that's how it started. You contacted us originally. Mm-hmm. We get bombarded with things, and which is great, which is amazing. And Niall was like, "You got to look at this one," because I guess the emails go through Frank Amazing, our affable and mysterious producer. And I love World War II aviation. I'm a warbird fanatic. I'm incredibly interested in the female pilots, especially the Night Witches or just the female fighter pilots of the Soviet Union.
There you go.
And right now we're in the midst of your 7th Kickstarter. You have about $600 to go to reach the goal. You got 2 days left. We can help make you do it. Please, let's do it. So let's see if we can get closer to you fulfilling this. But for our fans out there who may not be familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into your book, which is White Lily.
Sure. I have been kind of writing as a hobby for, for most of my life. Just as a hobby, I would write, I would blog or write fiction or whatnot. And 2 or 3 years ago, I was living in Venice Beach, California, and there was a writers group, and my daughter, who's now 17, had kind of an interest, so we started going. And I wanted pages to present to the group. If anything, just kind of get my daughter interested in the process of how it worked. Mm-hmm. So I stumbled across this story of the deadliest female fighter pilot who ever lived. And I didn't know anything about her. And so I was like, wow, you know what? This is a story that I've never heard of, and it seemed really interesting. And just in reading over the details of her life, it seemed very cinematic. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to take her life and make it into a screenplay. So I took it down there to writers group a number of times and workshopped it, and and then I went to Hollywood and I started pitching it, and I got a lot of no's. So then I'm like, what, I at that time I had fallen in love with the story, and I was like, all right, fine, I'm going to turn it into a comic book. So this is issue 3.
Oh, and it's incredible. You were kind enough to give us an advanced copy of issue 3, your Phoenix Comic-Con special edition, very limited. But exactly. Right now, issue 3 of 6.
5.
Currently of 5? Yeah, 5.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right.
I'm debating whether I want to make it 6, but I think I want to leave it at 5. 5 may end up being a double issue, though. In terms
you told
of
me about 5.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you were telling me about what happens and all, and it's intense. So if I may a little bit go in, the story of the White Lily is of our two heroines, one primarily, and Lilya. How do you say it? Lilya?
Lilya.
Lilya. Or you can just call her Lydia, which this is her more correct name. Lilya was her nickname. Lydia was her.
Okay, so
more formal.
So we'll call her Lily to make it simple. And Katya. So these are two friends who are thrust into to fight for the motherland.
Yes.
And they both have really interesting background stories what brought them there. So
awesome.
if you may, can you give us a little background on our two characters? And they're really interesting and very brave, I think, what you've done, and very dynamic and very personal and really very real and really quite tragic. I mean, but these women are lionesses.
Oh,
you know.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can background our two main characters.
Sure. They are historically, they are the only two women in all of world history up to this day to achieve the title of ace fighter pilot. Are those two women, and they were fighter pilots for the Soviet Union during the Second World War. And Soviet history is a little sketchy, as we all know. So I, as a writer, had to kind of come up with details. But as best I can tell from the research I've done, Lilya lost her father in the Purge, which is an event that we see in issue 1. And to me, that was like a defining moment of her character, is that she became the deadliest female fighter pilot who ever lived. She achieved this moment of glory for a government that she, I'm sure, harbored a great deal of hatred and animosity for. Mm-hmm. And you see that in some of her interactions, like we captured in issue 1 and issue 2. There was another character, her commander, Tamara Kazaranova, that's also a real woman. And historically, they didn't like each other, and I put that in my comic book. And so Lilya is from Polish parents, and in order to kind of portray world events, I make her just formally from Poland. That was an element of her life I changed. Technically, historically she was born in Moscow. I decided to make her from Poland to make her more of an outsider, and to kind of give her that. I also gave her an accent, because when I was presenting the story in writers group, a lot of people were like, it needs to sound more Russian, but I didn't want every single person talking to be moose and squirrel, because I figured people would eventually get bored with that. Wow. So I decided, what if I made Lilya this outsider, and I make the native language Russian, but because she's not a native speaker, her dialogue will come across as very clipped and very, we must go, kind of thing. And so that was what I decided to do, and people seem to like it. So, and then Katya, I really knew very little about Katya, and very little has been written about Katya, and which I thought was sad. So I made her kind of one of the focus of my stories. Other people who have dealt with the story of Lydia Litvyak have just focused on her, and like Katya doesn't even exist. So I decided I would deal with Katya, and I made her Ukrainian, because I wanted to talk about what was going on there in the Ukraine at the time. And Budanova, it's her real name, is in fact a Ukrainian as well as Russian name. So I decided to make her Ukrainian, as well as a lesbian. And like reading historical accounts, that says that she looked right at home in terms of like the men's fighter gear and stuff, and was kind of indistinguishable from the other flyers. I'm like, well, that's enough then for me to take that license. But people do ask and say, well, historically, was she a lesbian? And I'm like, well, if she would have admitted that, they would have sent her to the gulag. So maybe she was, and maybe she wasn't. But I thought that was an opportunity to talk about, not only women in the military, but also gays in the military. So that's why I have those two characters.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to research, though, like to actually put together this story? I know you started off as a screenplay and then adapted it yourself for comics. I mean, how long did it take you to actually research everything, put together what was actually fact, historical fact, and then what you had to create almost as like historical fiction?
Well, again, because the history is so sketchy, the research didn't take long. Like you can just read the Wikipedia article, and you can do that in like 10 minutes. How am I going to turn that into a story that kind of grabs people? That took a while. So I worked on that screenplay for like a year and a half, I want to say, like sitting there going, okay, what about this? What about this? And I think that's why the story ends up kind of being so good, is because it's been filtered through a lot of minds, and it's been workshopped a lot. Of people like, no. So whenever people are like, well, I don't like this element of the story, I'm like, I understand you don't like it, but I've talked about it with many people, and I can explain not why I'm right, but at least why I made the decisions I made in terms of framing the story how I did.
Okay. Well, you did an amazing job. I mean, especially we had such little to work with, and you really fashioned an amazing piece of historical fiction. I can't give these books bigger thumbs up. I mean, from the art, from the research, and just that, like your first artist tragically passed away, Laval. Is it Laval? Is that how I would pronounce his name?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, and
Laval Davis, he'd been kind of in and out of comics for a while. And then this was like his break to kind of get history, to kind of set a name for himself. And then he died last year.
And it's amazing. I mean, with the character, the character expressions, with the interaction, because there is terrifying moments in the air, but then there's a lot of interaction between the flyers on the ground, and even even the tension between the men, how the men pilots don't believe in the women pilots, they think this is an experiment, and it's really with just the brutality of air combat, and he did an amazing job. And then you brought on do I say Bilbao? How do we say his last name?
I don't know. I only communicate with him via email, and he's in the Philippines. But I say the Bilbao, but yours is just as good as mine, I suppose.
Bilbao, Jake Bilbao is incredible, and he doesn't miss a beat. I mean, if you go through it and you have her getting shot down over the skies over Stalingrad,
right?
Parachuting into the Battle of Stalingrad, and I'm sorry, hold on, wait. And it's just now, what gave you the idea to do that? What made? I mean, I think it's brilliant because now you're showing not only the combat from the air, but also the apocalyptic goings on of war on the ground. And I loved how you did that. But what made you bring Lily back to Earth?
That was, one, she was shot down a few times over her career. She went through like 4 fighter planes, and she was quite a risk taker, that's one of the elements of the historical character that I maintained in presenting the comic. Is she was always taking risks, and she believed in luck. She believed that, you know what, if it's not your day, it's not your day. Therefore, you should push it. And if you don't come home, well, then it happened to be your day. So you had this kind of bizarre attitude that I also enjoy portraying. So she did get shot down a number of times. And like the initial, one of the early drafts of the script was just, kind of Battle of Britain. It's all about the air battles, which, you see in a lot of flyer movies, is that it's all about, there's the enemy planes over there. But somebody was like, dude, this is Stalingrad. You have to show Stalingrad. And I was like, okay. So then I wrote, I wrote a scene where she gets shot down and has to parachute into Stalingrad. And I just took all of the historical details I knew about Stalingrad, and I just shoved it into that scene. So I've got, like the burned out buildings, and I've got, these apartment buildings where, people are firing at it, because in Stalingrad, there was an apartment building where the Germans were going floor by floor. So like the Russians were on one floor and the Germans were on another floor, and it was just crazy. And they had to ration food, and at some point like people were eating sawdust. So I'm just like, I want that in there. And so I just presented this city of just burned out death and desolation, and people have reacted to it quite positively, which I'm glad to see.
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah. There's another great moment in issue 3 where she actually confronts the Hun who she shot down, and she's Jewish, and I mean it's a really it's so great. Here's this banged up German ace, if you could expound on that a little bit about now. Was she historically Jewish?
Historically, she was Jewish,
wow.
And historically, she did that everything in this comic book in terms of like she shot someone down, and then that is history as best we know it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I mean, maybe it was a legend, maybe it's like George Washington and the cherry tree. Did that really happen? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Right? I don't know. But that is the one of the legends is that she shot down a German ace, which I identify by name in the comic book. That was his name, that she shot down, and he was captured by the Soviets, and he's like, all right, well, you know what, before you guys kill me, I'd like to at least meet the pilot that shot me down. And so they take him in front of Lilya, and he's like, this is a joke. You're trying to humiliate me by saying I've been beaten by a woman. And then she relays the dogfight that they went through. And then he has to kind of acknowledge that, I guess I did get beat by a woman. So that was another event that historically apparently did happen, as best we know, and I put in issue 3.
I have a friend who was a German fighter pilot in World War II, and he wrote a book called A Bowl of Kapushka, which means a bowl of soup or something, a potato soup or something. And Gottfried Delius, his name. And Gottfried actually did shoot down. He shot down, I believe, 5 planes. And he was a German pilot in a 109. And he actually he shot down a British ace. And he said that the Brit was far better pilot than him in a Spitfire. And he shot down, and then the British pilot wanted to meet him. And they put him in there to meet him, and he was a young pilot, and he said that the British pilot was like, "Jolly good old chap, good shot."
So it may be more truth than fiction, because that is.
I think, and he told me this story 15 years ago, or more, maybe 20 years ago. He told me this story, but then he got shot down on the Western Front. He had never killed anyone, and. Wanted to record the downing of the Russian pilot with his gun camera to capture him on the ground, and then he got hit by ground fire, crashed, and he spent 10 years in a Russian prison camp. And he got out of jail. When he got out and sent home, he said he was too weak to work and too strong to die. So they sent him home in 1954, and he weighed 51 pounds.
Wow.
About 6'1", 6'2". But then he ended up moving to America with his wife. He got to America. I believe he landed on American soil on 4th of July, like 1957 or something like that. So, and he's loves this country, the whole thing. But that really struck me when you brought him to meet the pilot, and I really found that really powerful, because I heard that firsthand from a German World War II fighter pilot. So.
And that, and I'm glad you have relayed that story, because when I talk about it and acknowledge that, this is legend, it could be true, it could be not. A lot of people I talk to go, no, that seems to coincide with, aviators and the aviators of World War II, is that there was this honor between them, and that if they were captured, they're like, okay, I've been beaten, I want to meet the person. So. And
what's cool though is that you have her as this fighter pilot, in these Knights of the Air, but then she's dropped down in the middle of Stalingrad to see the brutality of the German war machine and how her people are suffering, or her, her comrades who she had to swear oath to defend. And I love how that seems to open a whole new perspective for her. Plus the pilot she falls in love with, now she has something
which also historically did happen. So.
Wow.
She fell in love and was engaged to be married to that guy, Alexei Solomatin, as I show in issue 3. So.
Well, to get to your writing process, when you write comics, where do you start, or do you write full scripts, and then you hand them to your artist? Do you work Marvel style? What's your process?
My process has evolved a bit, but I do tend to start with screenplays, because I'm a movie maker. Also, I guess I don't want to say first and foremost, but also, and I make inexpensive movies. So you can go on Amazon Prime or iTunes and look up Standoff at Sparrow Creek, which we made here in Dallas for $500,000.
Oh, cool!
And then we're about to fund another movie in say a month or two. But those movie budgets are pretty tight. So because the movie budget is small, the kind of story you can tell is small, and so you need to do like single location features or whatnot. But I have a vivid imagination. So for the bigger stories, I take those ideas and I still write them up as scripts, but then I put them into comic books, and that's why I try and tell a story in 5 issues, because that's how long a movie should be.
Yeah,
And then issue 1 was the first White Lily issue 1 was the first comic book I ever did, and that I did not write a comic script for. Instead, we were just working off of the screenplay. And so issue 1 came out, and then when I was looking over it and looking over the finished product and comparing it to the screenplay, I'm like, I feel like there should have been, there were pages from the screenplay cut that I felt were important and stuff, and so I'm like, I'm gonna write it. So I wrote the comic book script for issue 2, and that's how I do it now. Is I actually will start with a screenplay, and then I'll just adapt it kind of issue by issue. Like, for instance, I'm about to need to do White Lily issue 5 or Guinevere and the Divinity Factory 2. That script's been written, but White Lily 5 hasn't been written yet. I mean, the screenplay is. I already know all the events and what happens, but I don't have the comic book page layout, so I'm going to need to do that.
Now, do you write your scripts in Word? Do you use Final Draft? Do you Scriptwriter Pro? How do you write your comic script? Because I know that you have it. You take it from a screenplay.
I do.
Yeah. Do you write the screenplay? Do you write your comic script in your screenwriting program? And if
yes.
so, what is it? What screenwriting program do you use?
It's called Writer Duet.
Writer Duet. Okay.
Yeah, and it's actually a website. You can just go writerduet.com. And it's something I noticed, and I think it helps. I have a process focus, meaning I really step back and I go, okay, what process got this result? That comes out of and in a different life, I had an interest in statistical quality control of manufacturing techniques. So when it comes to scripts, there's a lot of times you're working with a script and then, oh, you know what, you want to change this. So you want to change the script, but the problem is when you're working with other creative artists, how do they all get the information? And you'll be working with different versions of the script, and that can create confusion. And so that's where Writer Duet comes in, is that it's real-time software that we can all access in our browser. So I can pull up Writer Duet right here on my browser and just start typing out issue 5, and I can send you a link, and you can open it in your browser, and you're seeing it in real time as I'm typing it.
Oh, wow.
Therefore, it cuts out. Yeah. So that cuts out any problem of what version are you working on, because we're all now working on the same version.
Oh, okay. Okay. I've always been, I have Final Draft, and I use that. But my comic, when I write my comic scripts, I always revert to Word. I don't know if it's just
I only use Word.
Yeah, I guess I'm just a creature of habit. And I think Jimmy Palmiotti writes in Final Draft.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, Jimmy writes in Final Draft. I think Brian Polito writes in Word. I think he does. I'm almost positive. But Brian's a filmmaker too.
Yeah.
But
okay.
I think Bo Smith uses Final Draft, right?
Both. Does he? I think he does.
I think he does.
I think we've got an interesting show if you'd come back, and especially when Guinevere, because you're doing alternating Kickstarter projects. So right, you have Guinevere and the Divinity Factory.
Yes.
This is issue 1. This has already been a Kickstarter project, correct? A campaign.
It has. Yeah. Yeah. And then you can turn to the inside back cover and see all the people who backed us. There's a thank you page there. So that's already been done. And issue 2 of Guinevere is going to be 4th quarter. So I do one crowdfund project a quarter. So Guinevere 1 was issue 1, and then Guinevere 2 is going to be issue 4, and then quarters 2 and 3 is going to be White Lily 3 and 4.
And this is can you tell us a little bit about Guinevere and the Divinity Factory?
Yeah.
Sure. That was a lighter story.
Yeah, this is a great departure from from little children freezing to death in Stalingrad.
Yeah, exactly. Because and maybe it's just like time in my life or something, but you go through dark stuff and you have dark thoughts and you want to write a dark story, and then you discover the story about this woman who fought on the Eastern Front. And, the Eastern Front is all about death and depression and finding purpose and loss. And it touched me, so I wanted to do that. But not everybody wants a story that's deep. So I then kind of conceived of, initially I just thought, what if I just write a horror script? Because every writer needs a horror script. So Guinevere and the Divinity Factory was originally a horror script, or kind of horror action. And initially, it was actually about an entirely different main character that we're not going to meet until issue 2. But in taking it to workshops, I told you I take it to writer workshops. So initially, it was about a real person, a friend of mine. Which, by the way, Guinevere is also based on a real woman. If you look on the inside main cover in terms of her likeness. But I know this guy out in L.A. He's like a boxing coach. He's big and athletic and very fast, and from England, and he's he's also a Trump supporter, which the people didn't like at the script writing group. And I remember, he's out there in LA. He's got all these ideas for, oh, I want to do this show or I want to do this show, and he was pitching it up. And I remember when I was writing him up, I was asking him, okay, how do you want me to describe you? Are you African American? Because you're not really American. He just looks at me and he goes, I'm British. I'm like, British it is, sir. So, but yeah. Yeah. So he was my original character, and he had this sidekick character who could do a bit of magic. And when I presented the story to people loved the sidekick character because she was attractive, and her magic was kind of mind manipulation magic. And I think people just like seeing women do mind mojo because that tends to be how we feel about women anyway. Is like you think one thing and then this attractive woman comes up and shows you some skin and suddenly you have a different thought about things. And so
lose their mind.
Yeah, you just lose your mind. And so that's like Guinevere. And like Guinevere and the Nutty Factory, issue 1, like, the first few pages, she's just walking into a place. She's an apprentice wizard, but, as we find out. But she's just there to learn magic. And meanwhile, people are freaking out and chasing her. And she's like, look, guys, I'm just... So, it's kind of her...
The attention to detail is incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, we got a really great penciler for that one. Yeah, Rod Looper.
Rod Looper and Diana Greenlaw?
Greenhalgh, yes. Diana Greenhalgh.
They're amazing. Can you talk about them?
Sure. Diana is out of Vancouver, and she did all the inking for Guinevere and the Divinity Factory, as well as some of the inking for White Lily issue 3. And she was also editor on both books. And Rod Looper, he's out of Brazil, and he just did really great stuff. I didn't know who I wanted to work with for Guinevere, so I actually had Diana, put me in touch with a few different pencilers, and I gave them basically a test. I'm like, all right, I look through people's work and I'm like, it all looks pretty good, and so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna audition a penciler, and so I chose 3, and I said I'm gonna pay you your page rate. And I want you to draw page 2 from Guinevere and the Divinity Factory, which is where she's climbing the stairs, and you get this kind of butt shot as she's climbing the stairs. And so the page there where she's climbing the stairs in page 2 is actually his initial audition piece was that one. And I looked at it like there's all this element and all this stuff going on that wasn't even in the script, like that car that's under the bridge and stuff and under the like he put all this stuff in there that the other penciler didn't. And I'm like, okay, this is my guy, because I love how he was just able to capture just this, like, the vastness and the excitement of this party and all the things that were happening. And so I chose Rod Looper to do my whole book. And by the way, that is one of my principles as a creator, is I want the art team to be the same throughout the entire book. So the team that does the covers is the same team that does the interiors. I don't bait and switch where you got a really good cover team and then the interiors is done by somebody else.
Yeah, we've seen parts of many books like that, but they're hitting it out of the park.
Right.
Black Wolf, our pal, Black Wolf Senpai. Hello, Senpai. Frank Amazy wants to know where we can get the book. So, Nile the Brain, could we... Oh, I guess you're running it. You're running the...
Yeah, I've been running it as you guys were talking about it. So Black Wolf wants to know where they could purchase this book if it's available for purchase. Guinevere and the Divinity Factory. Yes.
Now, is there a way to get Guinevere? I mean, I know you've already crowdfunded the first. Can you give us a...
It's on In Demand on Indiegogo, so you can get it there.
Okay.
And I believe it's also on eBay. Like I sell copies on eBay. So.
Oh, excellent. Now... Back to your current crowdfunding project, White Lily number 3. This is your... So now you actually just mentioned something now I'm thinking about it. So you're done Kickstarter, and now you've also are doing Indiegogo.
Yes. I mean, people... So I did that with Guinevere. I did them both simultaneously. And this time around, I mean, like Kickstarter, grossly outperformed Indiegogo. So all the people who were like, I'm only going to support you on Indiegogo, I'm like, well, it didn't amount to a whole bunch. But nevertheless, if people want to be there, I will put out a Indiegogo project so that they can back it. And So, but as this time, instead of doing it simultaneously, I'm now going to do it. Okay, now that the Kickstarter's done, here's the Indiegogo project if people want to back that as well.
Okay,
It's going to have a really low funding goal, like $500. So.
Yeah, and then you'll put it in demand.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. So what are your thoughts though on the two platforms? So you've had experience with both. As far as the structure, for anyone out there who's looking to do a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo, what direction would you steer them in?
It depends on how Comicsgate they are.
Yeah.
If you're dealing in that crowd and you're swimming in those circles, then you're going to want to be on Indiegogo because that crowd doesn't like Kickstarter. But if you're not swimming in those circles, then Kickstarter is a better platform. It will, you can just throw up a project, and I've done this, like variant covers. I found some sketch covers of White Lily issue 2. I just threw it up on Kickstarter. I didn't even promote it, and Kickstarter brought me an audience. For Guinevere and the Divinity Factory on Kickstarter, I did a follow-up campaign of just the variant sketch cover. Kickstarter brought in $1,500 without me promoting it. Just Kickstarter brought that to me, and Indiegogo can't. Indiegogo brought me $1,500 for their portion of the main campaign, and that's with me actively promoting it. So Kickstarter is just better in terms of delivering results. Now, I understand that people don't like, and I get annoyed whenever I log into Kickstarter, on their homepage is going to be whatever social justice nonsense projects they could find and throw up there, but I still got to go where the money is. So.
Yeah, and that gets a little frustrating. Yeah, and I agree with it. That gets frustrating because a lot of it does seem politicized over there.
Oh yeah.
We did it. We hit our.
And meanwhile, they never given my project any love, and I'm like, these are real. This is women's history. I've got one of them's a lesbian. I never get no Kickstarter love. I'm like, screw you people. But meanwhile, Kwanzaa can put out what if only black people were superheroes, and Kickstarter just falls all over themselves. I'm like, are you serious? Anyway, so whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah.
What it is.
Now, have you gotten any backlash running two simultaneous on different platforms? Have anyone ever made any comments to you?
No.
No, I was always curious about that because there's not too many people, and it's good to know that there are people out there that are running simultaneous campaigns and hitting both platforms. So now, when you're putting this stuff together, are you primarily the factor that is just creating these strategic plans for your Kickstarters, or do you actually have a team that's not necessarily the creative team, but they help you put these together and fulfill these Kickstarters?
I have a fulfillment team. Currently, I'm the only person on it.
Okay.
it's like
all right.
That seems to be the way. But you know what? That's great about it. He's a one-man wrecking ball.
Exactly.
One-man war machine. I love it. This is the true entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, I do my best. And Guinevere, I got to say, so I put that one out as a lighter story. It's got a lot more sex appeal, and everybody loved it. And I also I did something as an experiment, which started as just a market concept or kind of an entrepreneurial concept, and that's since I'm paying top dollar for the art team on the interior pages. What if I go big on a bunch of splash pages so that I can take those and make those with prints? Mm-hmm. So we had 23 interior pages on Guinevere and the Divinity Factory 1. And out of those 23 interior pages, I have 4 splash pages and 1 2-page spread. So the artwork just tends to be huge. And everybody loved that. I haven't gotten a negative comment from anyone about Guinevere and the Divinity Factory. The only flack I got was that was about my ability to ship a book that would arrive flawlessly. People were like, I got your damn book and it was that. I'm like, okay, calm down. And I will send you some more. But even as people are yelling at me for not shipping their book correctly, they're like, this book is so pretty. And then you agree. I'm like, okay, sir, I'm going to send you another copy. It's all right.
It really is. Where do you get this printed, your books? Because the production quality is incredible. And I have to give a nod to my buddy Blonde, too. He is an amazing, amazing colorist with the differential between the warmness of the barracks to the cold, the very cool palette for Stalingrad, to then sweeping vistas of the skies, above the Soviet Union, and He's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, and you look at White Lily issue 1, and it's not bad. You look at the interior pages. It has a colorist, and you go, well, this is not bad. But then when Blonde takes over in issue 2, you're like, oh wow, this is awesome. So yeah, Blonde and I have found we work together pretty well. And so he's actually going to be taking over as editor. So in White Lily issue 4 and Guinevere and the Benefactor issue 2, Blonde will be both editor and colorist. So.
Well, you're in good hands with him.
Yeah.
Please tell him I said hello when you see him.
You have a great production video for your Kickstarter, and I think the quality of it is fantastic. I think a lot of guys could take a couple notes from this. So if you guys don't mind, I'd love to play
for the White Lily one or the Guinevere one.
For the White Lily.
Okay, thank you.
So I would love to play this if you guys wouldn't mind.
Sure, yeah.
And it'll also give the fans something to look at. Well, exactly. It's that film experience.
I'm comic book creator Preston Poulter, and I am in love with women who died long before I was born. Lydia Litvyak, the White Lily of Stalingrad, was the deadliest female combat pilot who ever lived, and I tell her life story in 5 issues in the comic series I created called White Lily. People ask me what drew me to her story, and honestly it was the profound losses that she suffered. She lost her father under the Purge during Stalin's regime, and then later when the Germans invaded, the Soviet government asked her if she would serve the Soviet Air Force, and she did so in an attempt to restore honor to her family. But there were so many conflicted loyalties with this Jewish woman fighting the Nazis in defense of a brutal communist government that I got to explore as a writer, and I thought, what a great story. The story came to me at a rough time, personally, in my life. My father was dying, my marriage was falling apart, my daughter was growing up and leaving home, and I took a lot of the sense of loss that I had and I poured it into this story. And now when I look at it, that's all I can see. A woman triumphing over adversity against all odds in a quest for meaning. And the great loves of her life, all of them wondering if today would be their last day. So this Kickstarter is for issue 3 of 5. In this issue, we see Lilya shot down over Stalingrad. There's a variant cover exclusively available to backers of the Kickstarter. Once I complete all 5 issues, it'll be put out in trade paperback form, and I won't need to print any more comic books. That makes them rather collectible, so get yours today. Thanks again for your continued support of the White Lily comic story.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the best videos, honestly. I mean, just the animation of your images and everything. I mean, that's such a well put together video. And I love, and I have to have you on, because we're going to do a how-to series, and I'm in the works and talking with a lot of people. It's another series, but I definitely want to have you on for 2. 1 is writing comics, and 2 is production of promoting and marketing your crowdfunding campaign, because unfortunately, there's so many great books out there. There's so many talented people, but a lot of them let that slip. They let that video slip. I mean, you're talking, you're face-to-face with the camera, you're one-on-one with your possible backer, and you're showing them clips of the book that are very cinematic. Some people don't have the capabilities, but I mean, can you tell me a little bit of how you put together these videos?
I paid someone to do it. It cost me $300, and there it is.
That's worth
that's
it.
Oh yeah. That was a good value, and that included shooting me. I mean, you hang out in LA and film circles, you get to meet people, and you get on email lists and so on. So I just put it out there like, hey, I'm looking for someone to edit a Kickstarter video, and there's a guy in LA like, oh, I'll do it for you. And I looked at his stuff, and that's the same guy that edits for the woman. A woman who does other projects. So her name kind of eludes me right now. But and that's what he does, is he kind of takes the comic book artwork and he animates it. And so I said, okay, cool. And so he's like, yeah, here's my apartment. Come drop by. And he put that black cloth on me, and he filmed me, and then he just edited the whole thing together. I'm like, awesome. So that was that.
Incredible.
So there's value in investing in your video.
Exactly.
Well, and Preston, like we said, please come back with us because that is a video can sell a book, right? I mean, first,
Yes.
you can only see so much through splash pages or comic pages, but when you can actually move it like that and have it timely, it's not too long, it's not too short. It's really probably one of if not the best video I've seen too.
Thank you. Well, at some point you should take a look at the video I put together for Guinevere and the Divinity Factory. I actually made a music video because, again, it's based on a real woman. So I got her and I put her in the blue dress. And so we intercut these live scenes with the comic book artwork. And I thought it was really neat.
Well, should we check it out? I have it right here.
Yeah, that's the man. So let's play it. Can we?
All right, sure, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm writer and creator Preston Poulter, the one who brought you White Lily, the story of the 2 deadliest female fighter pilots in history. And judging by the reaction I get from fans at the comic shows I do, my next story is going to be even bigger. Guinevere and the Divinity Factory. Our story opens with Guinevere, who's an apprentice wizard entering a palatial estate. There's a massive flapper party going on, but she's not here for the party. She's here to meet the patron wizard, the master of the house, Francis Gatz. Imagine combining Harry Potter and the Great Gatsby, and you get an idea of the world that results in Guinevere and the Divinity Factory. To help bring this story to life, I commissioned Juliet Kita, whose likeness I used for the character of Guinevere, together with her husband Nathan, in order to act out the 2 lead roles in the opening scene of the comic book, set to the music of Big Bad Voodoo Daddy in a music video. We have some wonderful perks for people who back our crowdfunding campaign. We've got the comic book, we've got the music video, we've got fantastic art. I've commissioned a variant cover. It's beautiful. It's only available to people who back this crowdfunding effort. I look forward to all of my returning customers, as well as the many new ones that I'm going to meet.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
That is awesome. Wow, I love it, man. I love
she's
that.
stunning too.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So that scene, you saw the scene where she's climbing the stairs and you get to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the very first page that I auditioned the pencilers on. So that was the first page that was ever drawn of that comic book.
And you're like, wow, okay, yeah, you got a job.
Exactly. Yeah. and unfortunately, he after Guinevere and the Divinity Factory came out, he got so many offers that I had to find another penciler for issue 2 because he's like, I want to do more of the book, but I got so much work that's paying a lot, so I'm gonna have to wait and come back to you. I'm like, all right, fine. So
hey, so we have a couple questions here from the chat. First one is Black Wolf Senpai. How hard was it to research the information on White Lily for your comics?
Again, most of the comic book material comes straight out of Wikipedia, so it wasn't that hard. I mean, finding it initially was purely accidental. That was just a Google search gone wrong. And I'm like, who the hell is this woman? And then I read her Wikipedia page. I'm like, this is amazing. So I'm just like, I want to take the information on this page and I want to put it in a comic book and dramatize it. So it wasn't that hard. Fantastic. And also because Soviet history is so sketchy, I'm like, who could say I got anything wrong, honestly? So,
yeah, exactly. And then Wow the Internet asked, also, any good tips for writers? Do you have a routine that works for you?
I mean, there's a book I use for screenplays, which I think works also pretty well, and that is it's called Screenplay Structure by Dan O'Bannon. I don't know if you're familiar with Dan O'Bannon by name, but you're certainly familiar with him by work. He wrote the screenplay for Blue Thunder, and I think one other one, but he's written some very successful films, and with Alien, he spawned a whole franchise, and and by the way, if you go out and you look at screenplay books, there aren't very many that are written by actual people who wrote screenplays that did well. So right. He's kind of unique in that way, and I like his book. It's very to the point, and he has this belief that it's about conflict, not character. So if you look at, like the Alien story, for instance, there is not a lot of revelation of who these people are before the action happens. As Dan O'Bannon puts it, the audience is really only interested and character is only revealed when characters are making decisions that are relevant to the plot. And that's a discussion I get with writers all the time, is because I was looking at a book recently where another indie comic creator was like, hey, can you look at my book? And I looked at the book, and the book has this whole transport to another dimension. But the first, basically issue 1 ends with her being transported into another dimension, and the entirety else of issue 1 is this woman is a young woman and her dad dies and she has to go to the funeral, and she and her mom are fighting, and she's home and she's depressed, and then she gets really mad, and then when she gets mad for whatever reason, that opens the portal, and then at the end of issue 1 she's in this fantasy dungeon. And I'm like, okay, I feel like your story's picking up right there at the end of it. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, the entire issue 1 is merely a setting up for this big moment, and you don't want that. And that's something about Guinevere and the Divinity Factory. People have said, not me, other people said that this was the best open to a comic book series or franchise I've ever seen. Because we open with Guinevere, issue 1, there's an attractive woman going to a party. You don't know who she is, you don't know what that party is, but there's action going on. And then using an O'Bannon method, as she's an attractive woman and this guy's approaching her, but she's like, I'm not interested in that, I'm looking for someone. And so you, the audience, come in, well, who's she looking for? And so you kind of follow along. You are asking questions at the same time kind of other characters are. And so again, with the Dan O'Bannon method.
Yeah, and she's taking you into the story. You're following her into the story. So
yes, you're following her to the story. And so I think many people would begin that story way earlier. And there's this moment in Guinevere where she meets the Master Wizard, and he teaches her how to astrally project. She's never done that before. And so he takes her back to his private sanctum. I had to decide what a magician's sanctum looked like. So I decided it would be dedicated to the doors, because wizards are looking for doors. And so, he's got all this doors memorabilia on the wall. And there's this big bathtub, this big freestanding bathtub that's right there in the middle of his sanctum that I never even explained. I put a big bathtub there, and there it is. But, if you know the doors, Jim Morrison died in the bathtub. So I figured would have collected it, so that's just there in his sanctum. But he teaches her how to astrally project. He puts some drugs in her drink, and boom, and he's having her sing "Break On Through" as she projects. And then I had to decide, what does a soul look like? And I'm like, well, a soul, I decided, would look like your self-image. It's however you see yourself, that's how you're going to look like on the other side. Mm-hmm. I mean, is that logical?
Yeah, it's very logical.
I mean, it seemed logical to me, right?
Yeah.
You shouldn't look like your physical self. You should look like your mental self, how you see yourself.
Yeah.
And based on all the people I know and all the people I've talked to, when you really drill down on them, most people have a self-image which is quite negative. Mm-hmm. Am I wrong?
No, you're right.
You're 100% right.
Yeah. So she astrally projects.
I wouldn't like me. I wouldn't want to hang out with me.
Yeah, so she astrally projects, and she goes from this attractive, stunning woman to this battered, bruised, younger version of herself. Mm-hmm. It's got blood and bruises and stuff, and she's embarrassed because she can't hide. And the wizard's like, look, don't worry about it. He's like, the reason I brought you here is because when you're in this realm, you can't hide. This is how you see yourself. And he tells her, a trauma has tied you to this identity. And so then we, the story, oh my God, she's a battered woman. And a lot of issue 1 of my comic book would be about this teenage girl who gets the crap eaten out of her by her boyfriend. But that's not what the story's about. The story's about her doing magic and, on this quest. But I work in the backstory as, part of the scene where she's actually projecting. And so I think my note to writers would be, read that book by Dan O'Bannon and really think on each scene, how, what is the conflict of the story? What is the conflict of the page? And if the scene is really just a moment of character, I would cut it. I don't think character moments are really all that fulfilling or interesting.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, let's get into your territory. The one.
Well, yeah, let's see. I mean, what mistakes have you encountered in your experience? Because, a lot of guys watch this show. They're looking for experiences. They kind of want to hear from you guys that are really out there, making a scene. What is the number one mistake that you would really like to share with anyone, if you've encountered any mistakes during your crowdfunding processes?
Like, what wouldn't you do again?
I don't know. I mean, all right. So I started out 2 or 3 years ago, a couple of years ago, and I commissioned, a cover and the first 5 pages of White Lily, and I put that up on a crowdfund for 10 grand, and I failed. But I mean, at the same time, I can't necessarily call that a mistake because other people have done successful crowdfunds with less. But my advice to people is that you need to focus on your social networking and your YouTube channel. And I mean, these days when I'm looking at creators, I'm I'm trying not to throw stones. But at the same time, I do have to be realistic. That don't have the level of artwork that I have. In terms of the comics, most of them haven't completed the comics. Like White Lily issue 3. This is up on Kickstarter right now, and I'm holding it in my hands. That's how quickly I can fulfill it.
Yeah.
But most people don't do that. So, I feel that right now a lot of people are enjoying a lot of success without necessarily doing the hard work of producing the comic book, just by kind of selling an idea, vaporware, as we would call it in the industry, and it seems to be working well for them. So what that tells you is it's all important about your online presence and your social network and your YouTube channel and all this other stuff. So, I mean, I'm almost at the point where I'm like, who gives a darn about the story? Just go out there and make a bunch of friends and get a bunch of contacts and get a bunch of subscribers and followers, and you'll get a successful crowdfund, and then maybe your book will be good, but you don't have to worry about it until then.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that could be the way it is. It is you can have a cult of personality. You can have people, striking on certain social issues, and people want to support that, and but then again, the most important thing is get that book out. I mean, I have one particular book that I had supported, and it's like 4 years now. So I mean, people don't mind waiting a year and a half. To be honest, that I don't mind if as long as the creator gets in touch with you. And a lot of times they start building onto that book, making the story much bigger because they have the finances now, and that's great.
Yeah.
But just in touch with people. A lot of times they just go ghost.
They do. And sometimes you get a package a few years later, and you're like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
And then your wife's like, what did you buy? I didn't buy anything.
There's kind of that's happened to me. I've gotten a package in the mail, and I opened it, and I'm like, what is this? And then something to buy back this project. I'm like, I don't even remember it, but all right.
Yeah, I won't say names, but that happened to me a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Well,
I've kind of approached this from a different philosophy. Most comic creators out there are just doing like one project a year to like a year and 18 months. I'm doing one a quarter. For me, I just want to cycle through. I want to be like, all right, White Lily issue 3 is up right now. White Lily issue 4 is going up in the fourth quarter. You meanwhile are going to get this book in quarter 3. And when you get this book, I'm going to be talking about White Lily or issue 4, which is going up in the third quarter. And then I'm going to hit up with Guinevere in the fourth quarter. So I view it as a continuing conversation of building trust and building fulfillment, so that every time if you go to a project I'm doing and you see it, you understand what my, in business terms, we would call unique selling proposition is. If you buy a comic book from me, it's going to look good, it's going to be fulfilled quickly, and there will be a continuation of the story not too far in the future. So that is the brand I'm attempting to communicate to people, and maybe my experiment's going to fail, or maybe it will succeed, but I have valid reasons for doing it, so I guess I'm just kind of putting it up there.
Black Wolf Senpai says that is outstanding. Love this concept, and I agree. I love your formula. I think it's fantastic too. I think it's smart, and you're building an audience. They know every quarter there is new comic book.
Yeah, their story continues. They don't have to wait a year for the next installment. I think it's great. If it could be kept up with every crowdfunding creator, depending on the storyline, should adapt to your model.
From Pocket Jack's comics.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, okay, let's have some fun, shall we, Nile, with our guest?
Yeah, go for it, my friend.
Well, that's your question. You know, I've been talking the whole time. You want to
Well, I got a question for you.
Yes.
Now, I haven't asked this one in little ones, but do you now, as a man, you seem to be quite into history and also quite into magic. So, on a personal note, do you believe in any of the existence of ghost UFOs, Bigfoot, anything of those natures? Do you believe in anything that supernatural actually exists? No,
I don't.
All right, that's the answer right there.
There you go. Okay, now I have a question for you. What's the scariest thing to ever happen to you?
This person is calling me about the fact that I threatened them with a lawsuit, but I'll get to that one in a minute.
That's the scariest thing.
That may be the scariest thing that happened to him, but I finally found how to get Kraken Print to call me back about my order is to write up a lawsuit, send it to him, and go, if you don't call me, I'm filing that.
Well, that's great. Well, you know what? You got to get to work. You got to get on to that. So, Preston,
I do.
We'll wind it down. This has been wonderful. It's been really educational. I'm a fan. I'm going to support this tonight, if not first thing in the morning. The White Lily series. It's 5 issues. Issue 3 is live right now, and it's actually finished. I mean, this book is done. And it looks amazing. It really looks amazing. I mean, you've hit on it. It reads like a film, and it's been.
That's because it started as a film.
Well, well, you did it. It's a real privilege. There's a lot of funny moments too. And again, the air combat illustrations are, I memean, they're incomparable to what else I've seen for years now. So
thank you. And I mean. I remember there was one review that they just didn't quite get what I'm trying to do, but I had to think about who Lilya was, and just taking the historical facts of she lost her father, she's serving for the people who killed her dad, she took a lot of risks, including volunteered for a series of increasingly dangerous missions to fight at the battles of Stalingrad and Kursk. And I'm like, this doesn't seem like a completely sane together person to me. This seems like someone who was maybe a little bit crazy. And I think if you look at like a lot of successful fighter pilots, or even just a lot of successful people from war, they were maybe a little bit crazy. You know, like I remember there was a story I heard about like a week ago about like this guy who storms a German machine gun nest with a rifle and a grenade. And, he was able to take it out and they gave him a medal. I'm like, okay, but odds are he was going to get killed there.
Yeah.
Right? He didn't, but odds are that was what was going to happen. And so if you think about the mindset of someone who makes that decision, that person is probably a little crazy. And if you're hanging out with that person, they're probably doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And so, that's how I portray Lilya, is having this very strong kind of death instinct craziness about her. And that other people find it very unsettling. But it also, to me, was very true to the kind of Russian communist kind of gallows humor that was there of the time, that these people had been let down by communism. They had been told that they were living in the most perfect society imaginable, and if you have a different opinion, you may not be here tomorrow.
Exactly.
And so, you should, the psychological pressure that puts you under. And meanwhile, you're like a Jew. And so you're not even accepted by the Russians as one of their own people. You're still being targeted for, harassment and persecution. And then here come the Germans, and they're killing your kind. As soon as they come into a village, they round up all the Jews and kill them. And so you're in a world absolutely gone insane. And I view it almost kind of like American Psycho. I don't know if you know that movie, but he's crazy. But the world he's in is crazy, so it seems like he's normal.
Yeah.
and that was kind of my mindset with this one. Is she's crazy? She's absolutely Cocoa for Cocoa Puffs crazy, but so is the world she exists in. Therefore, her actions seem normal.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
A
how
product of her environment.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
that's not unlike a comic book creator.
Exactly.
World. Well, fortune indeed favors the bold, my friend, and you are living that.
Yeah,
And we'd love to have you on.
When issue 4 is coming out, please email me. Let's get back on. Let's show the world issue 4. And guys,
the pencils are done, by the way, on issue 4. Like I could open up my folder right now and show you all the pencils. The pencils are done. The inking, if you go over to Jeremy Clark, he's been posting to his Facebook his inks of the cover of issue 4, which is looking pretty good.
Great.
And in issue 4, like it's about battling depression. Which is, kind of one of the themes of the thing is, when, she gets attached to people, but it's in the middle of war and they're dying, and, she's at issue 4 and some of her loved ones are dead and dying, and she's just coming to terms with everyone's dying, and that's going to include me, and she just has this crisis of purpose. It was kind of the culmination of the whole story. And there's this moment where she's starting her plane.
No, don't ruin that. No, don't ruin
Okay.
that. You told me the
I won't
story.
ruin
My eyes were like saucers. You have to wait. Yeah, don't give that away.
Okay. I won't give that away.
One of the best scenes. I saw it as I was seeing it as a film, and it'll be one of the best scenes in comics history, of war comics at least. It would be one of the best moments in war comics history, because that only war comics, I guess, can identify with that. But don't give that away.
I won't give that away. All right, fair enough. All right, and
I'm intrigued now. I can't wait to see this. If you got Billy that excited over it.
Yeah, I'll tell you about it, Nile, afterwards. So, all right. Well, I got to go.
All right, thank you.
And because I got to jump on Ethan's show.
Okay.
Crowdfunding call
Tell
out.
them I said hi. And,
I will.
Yeah, spread the word of White Lily, number 3 on there, Billy. And guys, help share the word of White Lily. Back the project. Check it out. It's a great thing. We were gifted with a preview of everything, and it's absolutely fantastic. I'm going to finish reading it tonight. And again, Preston, I appreciate you coming on. Love your work. Love what you're doing. Please, please, please keep us in the loop. We definitely want to have you back on when you've got each quarter. We'll have you back on.
Okay, fantastic. I look forward to it. All right, and that's one of the other things I discovered about doing a project every quarter is, you start to get like a network of shows, and then it develops a relationship. So
exactly,
it's working.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Niall, why don't you take us out? I'm going to bid you all farewell. Preston, again, this was a pleasure. You're wonderful, and I look forward to having a friendship with you, and I look forward to us going more live and having you on our program.
All right, sure thing. Awesome.
Definitely.
Take care.
All right, guys. Billy's heading over to EVS's page to join that show tonight. So if you guys want to head over, go ahead to Comic Artist Pro's Secrets. So everyone, last 24 hours. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night. We will see you tomorrow night with special guests Peter Palmiotti and Mike Emmerts. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks again for tuning into Crowdfunding Comics. We look forward to hanging out with all of our crowdfunding fans every time we go live. And don't forget to click the link below and subscribe to our channel. And there's a little bell. You may want to hit that too. This way you get all the great notifications when we go live and when we upload some awesome content. You want to follow us? Sure, go right ahead at Twitter at CrowdFundComics with an X, Instagram, Crowdfunding Comics, and Facebook at Crowdfunding Comics. Till next time, crowdfunding fans, we'll see you soon.